here over the phone system is that now I can take a caller and have a second caller call in and complain to the first caller about what they said. So we can have multiple callers, conference calling in other words. Live impromptu AMA means ask me anything. Okay, I sent out notifications on Patreon. Let me go ahead and send out a notification on Easy Text, those of you who receive text message notifications. It's one of those little things, you know, there are a few different things that make the channel better, that cost a little bit, the operating costs, but they are totally worth paying into. One of them is text message notifications. In fact, I should have suggested that to JLB. Infinite Plane Radio.
Hey Tim, how you doing?
Pretty good. Today's open phones, but I did want to draw attention to it's the anniversary of the Christ Church event. Significance there, of course, being censorship has really ramped up since then. But anything in particular?
Yes, the same event by Prime Minister Ding Dong, or should I say Jack Ardern.
Yeah, Prime Minister Ding Dong, and that's when they censored BitChute and 8chan, and really YouTube really took a fall at that point. So yeah, this is 2 years now since they really ramped up the censorship.
Got you. Hey, so listen, before we go further on this topic, I just want to mention this side note. So I remember how you did Cult of the Obelisk, and I found that very interesting. I mean, the entire documentary series, I have went on it before, and while it is like it's expensive, heavily expensive, especially the thing about the rocket. So I decided to do this side topic about a week ago, and it has to do with the specifically motorsports. And this goes, I mean, most of it's on T racing, but they don't mention obelisk or anything, as I said in the post. But I just can't help but know that over the years, I mean, the whole 3-decade period plus like the whole 33 years. I mean, it'll be 33 years next year since like the whole development was in. But F1 cars, F3000, and all that, I noticed that most of their fronts have a very obelisk shape.
Really? Okay, let me look into that, and I'll take a quick look. You said F1
I have it on
cars.
the Black Lodge Discord. So the thing is, if you were to look into like the whole comparison, and this is just a personal comparison too. I mean, over the years, ever since like the years 1989 to 1993, like we started with more with this like bulky kind of shape thing, and from that on out, it just developed more into a sharp nose. And ever since then, I mean, you can say that while NASA's rockets are a type of obelisk that go up to the sky, these chassis, I mean, you know, I mean, most people watch it. I mean, it's lame nowadays, but I mean, right now they're basically just obelisks on the road, you know, with tires and all.
Fascinating. D's with wheels. No, you might be onto something here. I have to look also into the other aspects of the iconography, like the phoenix symbolism that's usually replete with, you know. I
Oh
mean,
yeah, and the paint jobs too. One thing T Racing does mention is paint jobs. So red for Royal Arch Masonry, blue for Scottish Rite, yellow and black for a Holy Roman Empire Corporation. Privateer company Aquila has very much a Holy Roman Empire Corporation. So yeah, I mean, do look into it when you have the time. But yeah, I just wanted to mention that side note. So back to the whole 2-year anniversary of Christchurch. My gosh, I mean, it's so amazing that one incident, and this is very akin to Australia. So one incident managed to change the entire spectrum for New Zealand. I mean, that's kind of a shock if you think about it at first. But then you also realize that it's always manufactured to restrict a specific type of freedom. So gun laws, I mean, that's almost always what it ends up being.
right, exactly. And this one, though, had an inverse effect on guns. I remember at the time, people thought guns are going to be banned, so it actually caused a spike. But what it did accomplish was it associated mass murder now with internet radicalized terrorists or extremists. So this shooter comes in and he says, "Shout out to PewDiePie," and then he shoots up a mosque. And so here you have an example of the new face of terror. It's this, white anti-immigrant racist.
Oh, certainly, certainly. And not only that, but to top it off, the whole Quinn, this also couldn't be well connected with Quenin. I mean, Quenin also has that sort of approach. And because they have that gun freedom kind of thing, I mean, it really molds the mind. I mean, it is a psyops in its own self.
Oh, sure. I mean, this was just a pretext to take away free speech, and it worked though. I mean, what they did with they realized here they chased us off YouTube, so we go to BitChute, and so now they go and they start blocking BitChute, and again, this is entire sections of the world not being allowed to hear certain viewpoints. So I think that this date though, this is the anniversary of a majorly transformative date, because again, 2 years ago after this date, they said we can't let people live stream on YouTube unless they have more than 1,000 subs, from your phone. Because it used to be if you had a thought, you'd pick up your phone, live stream it, and you could talk to the world. Well, after this Christchurch shooting, they blocked live streaming unless you had a 1,000 subs, which is quite a hurdle, and it's ostensibly
Oh,
for our
indeed
protection.
is. I mean, it's quite an obstacle too. I mean, like it used to be that in years such as 2015, I mean, and before, YouTube would always have such a wonderful platform on. I mean, restrictive, more or less, but they had a wonderful platform nonetheless. And for Christchurch to have prevented live streaming of certain specific demise, I mean, even that, I mean, as bad as demise is, I mean, especially death in the form of assault rifles pointing, 762 by 51, as bad as that is, I mean, they did not need to restrict live streaming. All they have to do is just ban the content. But unfortunately, no. I mean, it was loud and clear and angle to bring down independent slash natural slash real people, well, actual people, let's put it that way. And it's really to just keep the gatekeepers such as corporation establishments and the whole T gatekeepers alive.
Yeah, absolutely. The gatekeepers, and they essentially want to monopolize the reporting on tragic events. And they kind of set that pretext after the Vegas event of 10/1/2017, where they said, we can't let anybody report because it's going to confuse the public and make things more dangerous. So they started setting the precedent that if there's an emergency, we have to get rid of free speech. And I'm like, well, that's kind of why we need free speech. We need the free flow of information, in order to know what's going on. But they think, well, the public thinks that the media is honest, and I think that's what the error is.
Oh yeah, no, certainly. I mean, it's kind of like the way how major groups like say BLM, say MAGA, and even that like before then like nationalist groups like BNP per se. I mean, they've all been aimed not so much to go against the establishment itself. I mean, considering that they're all a part of the establishment anyway. I mean, the triple angle, the unholy alliances, but they're mainly meant to suppress anybody that questions ever, the narrative, like the ever so psychotic, ever so sociopathic narratives of restricting rights for thee but not for me. I mean, you get the logic.
Oh, yes. I mean, one good thing that happened last year was we were able to see the hypocrisy in just right there in our faces. Like one rule for them, they could go to the restaurants, we had to sit at home. So we've had this double standard put out in our faces. So hopefully that causes more people to be, well, disobedient. And I happen to think that radical criticism is at an all-time high. I've seen more people questioning whether Joe Biden is a hologram, a deep fake, or somebody in a mask than ever before. And also the theory that Justin Bieber might be moonlighting as the weekend has been touched on now by Super Recognizer, which means that theory that I think it's a fact. But anyway, that's going around.
Oh, indeed. I mean, this administration is the fakest administration of all time. The way you said Earth is fake, you can definitely say that it's fake, especially because we have to live through both hologram, deep fake. I mean, the mask came off too. I mean, somebody else managed to post that outside. I mean, I think yeah, it was faking space. So he managed to post that, shared it on Telegram, and my word, I mean, I think Beau Biden is purposely doing a terrible job, no doubt about it.
Oh yeah, and even if you're not on the side that it's actually literally fake, a lot of
Right.
people feel like the whole thing is so rigged anyway, it may as well just be fake. And by the way, I'm doing a test here. So on the screen, I've got PewDiePie in a MAGA hat pointing an AR, that is an assault rifle, at the screen. And I want to see if that is
Got
considered
it.
hate speech.
Yeah, it's actually hilarious. I mean, I remember 2019, the same year, they were hating on PewDiePie. I mean, not only that, but to top it off, I mean, they all thought that he was a wancist to say. I mean, really, I mean, it's not even hate speech. It's a clear reaction. I mean, you give person one picture, say of a candle, and they'll be like, "Oh, calming," and then somehow you give it the black sun symbolry, and all of a sudden they go full rage. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Now, look, I am a victim of the system of censorship. This channel, we've lost 80 some channels, but, I'm looking at this thinking, I'm not for it because they're censoring me to protect some innocent person out there who's had their feelings hurt, some snowflake, but it's an anonymous person. So
Yeah,
I don't get
exactly
it.
like the cry pillows, the cry bullies.
Right. But I would be all for it. I would say, okay, YouTube, you can censor me, but I want the person to actually let me know how I hurt them. So then the person could call me up and say, hey, on this day you said this and it hurt me. And I'll say, okay, well, I will remove that. But they never let us talk to the victims of our speech.
Oh no, certainly not. I mean, they never come out. I mean, for some reason they just don't want to come out or anything like that. YouTube never even reports who reported you. They never do that.
No, they don't, and that's kind of annoying because we end up getting bullied by SJWs, by the social justice warriors fighting on behalf of the oppressed. So they're actually defending an oppressed class, and this is my issue: is there an oppressed class that they're actually defending? Is there a group of people out there just weeping and gnashing their teeth because of free speech? No, no.
Well, the problem is that there's no such thing as an oppressed class. No, they're oppressing us. I mean, it's clear. Anybody that's funded by the establishment corporate, they are the ones oppressing. I mean, I don't go by this narrative at all. I mean, I don't know. I mean, nobody does really. But the thing is, I mean, the average person is constantly being seized at for not going for the tiniest little suggestion. I mean, it's really undoable in this case.
Yes, no, I agree. And here we are, 2021, and the censorship is continuing on very spurious grounds. It used to be you talk about 5G. Now you just mention QAnon. In fact, Mick West, who runs Metabunk, one of the major conspiracy debunking sites on the internet, he was debunking QAnon, and they took down his video and gave him a strike, just like they did to me after I made fun of it. And anyway, he managed to email them, and they gave him his channel back. But my point is, we have blasphemies now, taboos. You can't even talk about these things.
Oh yeah, yeah. You can't even talk about the fact that they had to completely appropriate Mr. Potato Head. They had to take the penis out and then turn it into a transgender, just like the other one. I mean, you can't even talk about stuff like that. It's censorship at its finest. And the fact that even though Metabunk managed to correct the whole Quanon thing for what it really is, and the fact that they would not even let him, go on and forward. I mean, it's really stupid. I mean, one day YouTube is just gonna have to wake up and realize that they too are nothing more than a bunch of stooges.
Or they're saviors. I actually think we're dealing with a religious mindset where the people in religions, the proselytizers, do feel like they have a mission to save the world. And so when they're silencing someone, they feel like, okay, there is a demon possessed, and I just took away the voice so that demon can't leap into somebody else. So they actually see themselves in a holy war. And in many ways, I think what we're experiencing now is a holy war. Only it's a war on behalf of scientism.
Oh, indeed, indeed. I mean, Rosicrucianism. I mean, scientism is a Rosicrucian subsidiary. So yes, I mean they really do have their they have their weapons intact and they have their stock ups on good blast, I should say.
So you suggest scientism is connected to Rosicrucianism. I find this to be very interesting because I think that the Enlightenment was hijacked in the sense that all of the sciences have been more or less controlled by the same groups that have a mystic core. And so you could say Jesuit, you could say Masonic, Rosicrucian, but Rosicrucian, isn't their motto the aim of religion, but the method of science?
Oh yeah, yeah, certainly. And not only that, but Rosicrucianism is a all-in-one. So if you know one of their symbols, you would see a dot in the middle, but the background around it, which is also colored, it surpasses the all-in-one. So, oh my bad, like yeah, the all-in-one meaning that any minority groups, you know how there's a minority majority and the Hispanicism and the blacks and the Samoans, they all get their privilege and blah blah blah. So they basically encompass that as meaning all operating as one.
Interesting. I mean, the word Catholic, universal, is what that means. And there is a unity among all these different secret societies and groups. And I think one thing that really binds them all, it's the symbolism that you can see that connects them all. And that's one of the things that we've studied. And lately I've been talking to someone who's really deep into astrotheology and how much of the religious myths are just coded references to the story that they've superimposed onto the 88 constellations.
Oh, certainly. Yeah, that last stream with Meek and Dank, oh, that was amazing. But I mean, I don't know. I kind of got bummed out that I missed it. But I mean, the way Meek and Dank says, I mean, we're basically in the we're in the era of Aquarius, and the previous era was Pisces. I find that interesting for another motorsport reason, but I'll post that like another day. But point is, I mean, since we're in the age of Aquarius, and unfortunately right now Aquarius just sucks flat out. I mean, this really it really just gives hint to like the whole air matter. I mean, that means like anything that comes out of your mouth, it's air. The fact that we have to mask up, I mean, cover the air. I mean, I was just at a farm earlier, but I mean, didn't even bother masking out, and they said nothing. But point is, I mean, the age of Aquarius, I mean, it really gives way to air, even though it seems like water. So air, oxygen, nitrogen through fluidity.
Interesting points here. I mean, when you get into the meta script, the zeitgeist itself, it's undeniable that breath and air is a huge part of it. You have all these reference. Last year, it was all about, I can't breathe. Then you had the affliction that would take away your breath. Then you had the mask dilemma, which is, do you wear a mask or don't you? And it's all about breath and breathing. And, I think all of this stuff is meant to set the stage quite literally, for the zeitgeist. And so I pay attention to all these different words.
Yeah.
So where are we right now? Dark winter has got to be over. Spring is next week. What do you think the next phase is?
So, I mean, Dark Winter, I mean, just kind of an opinion. I mean, if after Dark Winter, I mean, it looks to be that it could be more like a I mean, it's hard to tell. I mean, that's the honesty about it. I mean, if not Dark Winter, the world just probably get the new stupid. Instead of the new normal, it'll be the new stupid.
Right, a decline, certainly, certainly. Well, on this channel, as you know, we've been analyzing the big picture story and how it seems to be more or
Yeah.
less telegraphed.
No.
And I'm looking forward to
Yeah.
Space Wars, stuff falling from the sky. And I won't be surprised if it's Russia and China rather than Martians.
Yeah. Yeah. So, have you ever seen any? Just a second side note. Have you ever seen any sort of techno, like kind of android based on humans, like humanoid videos lately?
Actually, I have noticed that ever since about 2019, cyberpunk as a genre on YouTube, as a musical genre, the art, the aesthetic has been spreading. And a lot of the imagery is transhumanist, android, cyborg, and masks in a future, a very
I feel
sterile
like
future.
for some reason, I kind of feel like that one day, if it's not the new stupid for whatever reason, that one day, somewhere around like 2030, 2040, I feel like this will be a little bit akin to it's kind of a silly show, but on one part, but there's actually two versions of it. There's the original Bubblegum Crisis. So it's a show originated in JP. Not much for it, but so they had this sort of opposition, this factory that created androids. In the first series, within the 80s, it was like androids that were more or less smart, were seemingly like humans, and like there was like the background of city versus the rural aesthetic, but nonetheless, the androids were they started going rogue, and it was some company named Genome, if I remember correctly. And then in the 90s version, the if the new stupid does come in, the robots just more or less are a little bit inclined to themselves, but tend to malfunction, and they just go out of control.
Well, the idea of artificial intelligence, as this is actually kind of a strange topic in itself, because lately Elon Musk has been tweeting a lot of things about the dog star, making these bizarre statements. But his wife has been talking, Grimes has been talking about consciousness being uploaded into a computer. This idea of a new form of transcendence. And like, here's an article: Grimes wants to send her mind to Mars inside of a humanoid like machine, basically. So this is, again, part of the zeitgeist. And I think what they've done is they've recreated transcendence in the spiritual sense of ascending to heaven into this digital transcendence.
Oh yes, indeed, the religion, the how should I say? Yes, the religion of. Well, I mean, this is a lot of religions. It's as you said earlier, and it's as it's been proven. Though this is basically Christianity mixed up with Islam, mixed up with scientism, only to be turned into COVIDianism. So the new space age, the whole boring company. So I mean, going underground and all. I mean, that's exactly how it's gonna be.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just a new paradigm, which to me just means it's the old one with a new paint job. And every facet of the old one they've been replacing. In fact, even the idea of the PPE has replaced the holy garment. And I've seen increasing numbers of mentions of nurses having to deal with the non-believers. And it sounds like you're dealing with nuns bemoaning the spread of atheism. It's like, what are we going to do with these
Yeah,
non-believers?
certainly. And keep in mind as well, not to disturb, keep in mind that we have already had a couple of people within 2020 and 2021 that have already made space outfits. Like I'm talking like head masks, and they're already on it too. I mean, and there's already people buying it, and there's already people like just wearing it, rocking it out like it's the new style. But really, I mean, they're just taking us to the space age. I mean, the Earth is going to be space, and we're going to be restricted in the black.
Oh, I am on Instagram and I follow this one channel. I don't know why. Somehow I managed to start following this channel, and it's just taking high-end modeling shots. It's all models, clothing models. But what they're modeling is a clear face shield so that you can show your face, but it also has it restricts you from spreading COVID. It doesn't fog up, but it's like fashionable. And so I think the vax is something of a status symbol, like I'm saved, you're not. And the clear face shield is, again, adapting us to this idea that now we're moving into alien environments where our immune system isn't good enough and we have to be covered up. And it's working. They're selling it to people. So that tells you they're not going to have to force you into a spacesuit. They're going to make it trendy, and you're going to look funny if you're not wearing one.
Oh yeah, no, no. I mean, clearly we'll stand out like how should I say? We'll basically just be these heretics to them, the opponents. The way the Catholics treated the Cathars, if you're into the Gnostics narrative, the way BLM treats anybody that doesn't agree with their mantra, the exact way that the neocons treated the Muslims, and I mean, just basically in the United States, I mean, just the whole laws targeting them, like within the first couple years of the war on terrorism hoax. And yeah, I mean, but also keep in mind that those clear masks, I mean, the space mask, like the big bulky space mask, they also have a clear setting for them. You just have to take the tin out and go from there. So either way, it's going to be if not a dark space age, at least a very obvious all up in front of your face space age.
Oh, I'm expecting to see models on the runway with fish bowls on their heads. I wouldn't be surprised, at any of the stuff now. And the thing is, it has nothing to do with protecting you from a virus in that sense, because what you're dealing with is mostly just a religious garment. It's now part of a new paradigm. It's a new tradition to block you from the sin of the unvaxxed, the unsaved. Because real personal protective equipment is accompanied by procedures, standard procedures for decontaminating yourself and your PPE. And you wouldn't make PPE into a fashion garment because it's got to be disposable if you don't have some sort of a decon zone out inside of in front of your house. So it's just, to me, it's all just security theater. And the fact that it's becoming fashionable to wear a mask, well, I mean, you saw the rapper Futures had an album in 2017, Masks Off, where he was already selling stylized face masks years in advance.
Oh wow, indeed, indeed. I mean, there is even a jam by Trav that said cover up," and I can't help but combine that, get a couple narratives, even that of like the Bela Clava, like going from the separatist movement that they had in Andorra, and they all had clan style masks. I can't help but combine those three and a couple others more, and notice that basically they more or less had all to do. I mean, they're all part of the establishment, so they all had everything to do with what would later come to be the masked era, the face up era, the Aquarius of restriction era.
Right, right. And I think I think there was a lot of foreshadowing in also the Gothic subcultures, which, if you look at and I remember when I first walked into a Gothic nightclub once, they were all socially distanced, and they had their arms out almost to enforce the social distancing, and they were wearing gas masks. And I'm like, what the hell is this? Gas masks, dystopian music, 6 feet apart. And I think I saw the future. And I think what they do is they have the cultural vanguard selling people on the fashion that's going to accompany the changes in the future. The police state boots. Notice the Gothics all wear the police state boots. Well, they look like Antifas with gas masks for a reason.
Oh no, certainly. You look like a bunch of combative RoboCops with a bunch of Beaclavas. I mean, a lot of people that play stuff like Battlefield 3 and Call of Duty and blah blah blah. I mean, they all saw the Betaclavas. They all saw the mass. I mean, it really is mirroring. It's very requeening on one part, but on the other half, yeah, they clearly were putting something up. They were clearly shoving the narrative.
It's CIA sponsored culture. They do it in all the genres. All the major genres, I think, are pretty much created by or co-opted, if they're organic, for the purposes of course, driving public opinion towards certain ends. I cannot listen to a lot of the music I used to like because it's like, well, if I wanted to hear CNN, I'd go watch CNN. I'm not going to listen to some talented musicians.
I feel you, Tim. I feel you a lot in this case. I mean, I've been especially feeling that ever since like August, September 2020. And although a lot of it is due in parts with tranny gates, I mean, a lot of it's also due with the fact that it's too chaotic. I mean, I can't listen to stuff like Death Grind anymore. I can't listen to stuff. I can't even listen to stuff like Incubus. I can't listen to raps like Fabulous. I can't listen to I can't even listen to like pop stuff like Jason Derulo because apparently he's another deep fake character as well. Same with Drake.
Right. Oh, that's funny. I've heard someone sent me a message. They said, you got to look into this. They said that Drake, the person we all know as Drake, is actually a silicone hyperrealistic mask worn by another artist who Drake seems to have stylized himself off of.
Yes, Tyler Leapley, that is. And that's a Conscious X vid as well. And before Conscious X, there was a guy named I Exposed the MCs. He had a video on Drake as well. And apparently the first wave of Drake was played by a guy named Craig. I don't remember the last name. And then the second wave of circa 2015, 2016 was played by another guy named Leon Best, a soccer player.
Right. Well, again, and to your point, we grow up, we have these, not necessarily idols, but musicians and artists you respect, even authors. And then you find out, wow, they were all serving this agenda. And it doesn't detract from their skill.
Like you realize all that content.
Right. I mean, you might really like a song from a heavy metal band or something, and maybe it's about the world ending, and maybe you thought it was cool back then, but now you're looking and you're like, wait a minute, did Al Gore write these lyrics? And so looking at things very critically, even movies. I used to really be into movies. I was a film studies major for a little while before I got into journalism, and I can't watch a movie from start to finish anymore. Rarely, very rarely.
Yeah, it's very cringeworthy now. I mean, I still more or less try to do films, but out of more of a sense of the predictive programming stuff like the net per se, stuff like Brazil or stuff like even Mad Max. I mean, Mad Max especially because I mean it's this year, but I mean I don't know. It's like yeah, you get that feel that ever since they've been pushing narratives, and when you realize they've only been pushing narratives, and you keep going to newer frontiers of how it's, if not just a psyop, then also nothing more than pushing stylist fads, new policies, and stuff like that. I mean, you realize, I mean, you can't really watch this the way you used to anymore. I mean, there's no entertainment anymore. There's no such thing as entertainment. There really isn't.
No, it's the they live glasses. It's the ultimate spoiler for reality. So, I'm right now. I've been trying to get back into South Pole. We took a little bit of a break. I have to get a computer capable of editing a weekly show. It's really intensive work, and I want to extend the length of each episode to like 20 minutes. But mostly, what we're doing is critique, mainstream media critique, critique of the world in an uncensored format, animated. But on the world stage, the entertainment is it's just inherently dishonest. I listened to a comedy sketch by I think he used to be a comedian, Dave Chappelle, and it just seemed like every one of
Yes,
his
Malcolm
jokes,
Barrett.
yeah, every joke he told was just reinforcing the nightly news. I was like, where's the humor in this stuff?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's all agendas. It's all their point of view while suppressing ours completely out of the blue. I mean, it's so unfunny. I mean, do you remember George Lopez when he used to spill the beans on how he was pro Bernie and all that, and it really got boring with him, and like you stopped liking the guy. I mean, you don't even watch the shows anymore, stuff like that.
Yes, and I got bored with ethnic humor a long time ago, and George Lopez was one of those where, yeah, I just thought this is it's not even humor at this point. It was just kind of like shout outs to this mob, shout out to that mob, and then hating on
Yeah,
this
that
one mob.
bullshit.
Yeah, I got kind of tired of that as well. So this is the best form of entertainment for me, though, is media criticism. This is like literary criticism and film criticism wrapped into one because we're analyzing narratives and looking at the structures of these stories. And I think what we're doing here is far more entertaining than passively memorizing brainwashing.
Oh no, certainly. I mean, it's actually the best form. Yeah, I mean, media skepticism probably is the best thing to do right now. I mean, especially because all it's been is nothing more than a bunch of drags. I mean, you can't even go for. I mean, lowest hanging fruit is boring. I mean, I that's just an opinion, but it's old school. But on the other hand, I mean, media skepticism, the people that are just too high off. I mean, a lot of their hoaxes, a lot of their narratives and their words. I mean, especially Van Jones with the whole character thing, circa election. That's hilarious. I mean, it really is funny when you really dig to the bones of them. I mean, it's more immersing than films. It's more immersing than jams. It's more immersing than hell, even a conversation or two with a group.
Right, which is why this form of entertainment has been targeted for censorship. The term conspiratainment, like the term auto hoaxer, is a mainstream media term used to, demonize people who are entertained by conspiracy candy and the like. But I happen to think that we're occupying the same cultural space that X Files, Outer Limits, Twilight Zone used to occupy, and the government-controlled television shows like X Files would pretty much guardrail those topics. So now those topics have been decentralized and they call us conspiracy theorists for noticing anomalies in the system. But anyway, the term conspiratainment is a term that I'm appropriating because they've already used it to demonize what we're doing. And so I'm like, sure, I'm entertained by unraveling obvious conspiracies. What are you going to do? Censor me?
Oh yeah, I know exactly. I mean, conspiratainment had to be renewed into something fresh, something that cannot just be used, but also can also be turned into something of realization. I mean, clearly auto hoax has been turned into that, and this time around it will definitely be conspiring Tammans.
Yes, and look, this year, on the on the Joe Biden thing, I've seen more skepticism on the very existence of Joe Biden as a real person anymore. People are thinking he's an actor, a charade, and a lot of large channels, I'm surprised, are actually going out on a limb and saying, well, he used to have earlobes. He used to have blue eyes. So I think that media skepticism could potentially blow up based on the
Oh
level of.
yes, certainly, certainly. And I even did a transvestigation on Joe Biden, and I couldn't help but note that not only are there two different Joe Bidens, but the old Joe Biden had a more pronounced flat forehead. The jaw was more or less still thin, but not as minuscule. And also, I mean, the eyes were clearly blue. I mean, the skin was more tan, more, person-like. But this current Joe Biden, which is Beau Biden, possibly, it's just more, if not pale, then rather just rubbery. Like I mean, it's almost just a character at this point. It's nothing more than a mask, a costume. I mean, geez, I'm surprised they didn't even bother with the bodysuit.
Well, for the noobs here, could you please describe how one goes about transvestigating the President of the United States?
Sure. So, this goes for anybody as well. So, in order to transvestigate your major figure, first you have to look to the skull and bones to it all. So, if take a male, for example, like if you were to look for a characteristic common of a guy, you would notice longer humerus bones in the arms, like each side. You would also notice that the hips are much, much less pronounced and the shoulders would be much bigger in contrast. But if you're identifying a female per se, you would have to have more sloped down shoulders, more noticeable hip bones, something that carries a baby, as you know, and also flat forehead, close set eyes. So that's kind of how you have to go about transvestigating anybody. Like sometimes, if not just bones, sometimes like the skin too. I mean, their mouths on males are very large, and mouths on females are much smaller. Like the lips are point more forward, and wow. I mean, this is just stuff that's been noticed. I mean, since like recent. I mean, it's really all up on your face at times. And if you were to watch television at any given time, any given place, you would notice that almost none of these like show hosts, these celebrities, these musicians, I mean, these so-called authentics, none of them are the gender slash sex or that they say they are. Like none of them are authentic. They're reversed. They're gender bender.
Reverse. Okay, so this the theory though is this: we're dealing with a separate issue than uh, a certain.
Exactly.
We're,
When it comes to Joe Biden, it's separate.
yeah, we're suggesting here what you're suggesting in this theory is that the puppets that the elite use to control us are intentionally, for whatever reason, deliberately the opposite of what they portray themselves. And it's not that they had a certain disposition or something, but no, they're raised this way systematically, and it's an elite thing. That's the theory. And so you have people who are seriously investigating Joe Biden, not just to see if it's Joe, but to make sure that Joe's not really, not one of these. And I'd personally find it hard to believe because he's got a very massive cranium. Well, the old Joe did. The new Joe's skull is smaller.
Oh yeah, exactly. The old Joe at least had some buff on it, but then the new Joe is just, yeah. I mean, clearly it's lackluster, but also it's not really to attack transsexuals to say. It's just most of them are notably in lodges, chapters, and all that. And in today's day, there are such thing. I mean, in most days, there are such thing as poor transsexuals. So I mean, don't really take it personally. The
Right.
thing
That's
is,
what I
I
mean. It's a
mean,
separate
most of
issue.
it,
You're not talking about that. You're
yeah.
talking about this conspiracy theory that it's not reptilians that the elites are keeping a secret. It's that. So it makes me wonder. I mean, if this is all true, it's a very peculiar thing. It's a very
It's a
interesting.
major deceptive. It's a deception. It's a mass deception. So the thing is, I mean, like the overall narrative on that is the fact that they were making guys lust after guys, MTFs, and making women, girls, lusting over FTM, women, girls, essentially.
So, in other words, you have decades of women who are in love, fawning over Brad Pitt or whatever, and their husbands are fawning over Angelina Jolie, and this whole time it's been conflicting with their natural predilections. So it's an interesting theory. What's the point of it though? Because it's not stopping people from having children in regular families. It's not really
Oh
causing.
no, no, no. Admittedly, no. I mean, look, you. The thing is, I mean, they're so high up. You're never gonna find these people personally in front of you. I mean, most of the people you'll find around you are not gonna be like that. So, the thing is, the reason why it's not really stopping anybody or anyone or anything is because one, it's either too massive for them. Number two, they're so much in disbelief in it. Like the average person does not does not see that most are transgendered within the mainstream world stage, and like it's too hard for them to believe. I mean, they thought that everything was so normal, so fine, that it's in this process and not this process, or that sort of model and not that model. Like in other words, it's just like the lack of insight, like the lack of actual sort of research, or possibly even just like closed view sets even.
Well, political correctness would prevent most people from even considering the notion, because it's so topsy turvy to say that literally every single person on CNN is part of this subgroup, this elite group of people, or whatever you say, elite, you say separate, whatever. But so you could name names,
Yeah.
but you're saying like pretty much like 90% or more. And this is, it's almost like the movie They Live, where he finds out that it's not like there's one small group controlling the world, it's that they're everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like the Jew narrative. I mean, I noticed that accounts like blackpill.com, stuff like Autism Central, and even that of KMN, and even Epic Sellouts at times. I mean, most of them just say that it's one group, that it's always the Jews, or others say it's the Druids, but really it's a massive group. I mean, this is what Masonry is. I mean, they take a lot of the philosophies, like so much of them, from Islam all the way to something like Luciferianism, all the way to some like Anton LaVey's Church of Satan, and even that of something as obscure and completely empty as Sufism. I mean, they take all that, combine it, and at times use specific operations to make it seem like it's one who done it, all the way to another who done it, all the way to another who done it, and maybe collide the two or more. I mean, it definitely gives way to the fact that Pizzagate probably is more or less lackluster in that sense. I mean, they always say that it's Democrats doing it, doing the pizza and all, but really, I mean, it's the whole club if you were to look outside of the scope of Pizzagate.
Right. Makes me think of the Truman Show, where Truman was outnumbered. And, so whenever we have these conspiracy theories that involve this pyramid structure, you assume, okay, it's a handful of bad guys manipulating everybody. And if everybody just woke up, we could stop them. And it's like, well, what if it's not like that at all? What if it's not a handful? What if it's actually a larger percentage than we think, and it's far more pervasive and widespread? There's no way you could rise up against it if that were the case. So I'm more in the camp of, if there is a conspiracy that has the world on lockdown, its perpetrators are many and everywhere. I don't think it's a small cabal that you could just find and maybe even excoriate and remove. No, I think it's everywhere, whatever it is.
Oh, certainly, indeed. No, it's everywhere. I mean, usually the regular casual agent will just say, oh, no, outside the internet, you're not going to find masonry. But the problem is, if you go outside and look at some signs, there may be some color coding. There may be somebody with a very royal arch red outfit, and they just have a seemingly strange, out of bounds face, a la Trinigate. And if not that again, they may also see something that seems very nice, seems very rainbowy, but they don't realize that the rainbow is a 22nd degree Mason symbol of the Scottish Rite Lodge.
Right. Yes, they're intentionally misled about the meanings of the symbols, and they give these symbols to the masses to parade around with. Meanwhile, they're completely unaware of what these things mean. It was very clear last year watching these protest groups marching around, hands up, don't shoot, Masonic, kneeling, Masonic, spray painting 1312, Masonic. I mean, everything they're doing indicates that they're being puppeteered by the powers they think they're fighting.
Oh, indeed. No, they are. I mean, like even last year, I mean, if you were to walk around on site and see like the billboards of the Save Lives, Stay Home and stuff like that, I mean, it's really contradictory right off the bat. And pink and purple is very Rosicrucianist, even Rainbow Lodge at times. I mean, that's how you know. I mean, they just it's everywhere. They have us right down to the brain.
Rainbow, I think the Order of the Eastern Stars, the female Masons, their younger group, their youth lodge is called the Rainbow Girls, and then the Freemasons have the De Molay, of course, named for the guy that was burned at the stake on Friday the 13th. But these symbols, yes,
Yeah, yeah,
all the
certainly.
occult symbols, they have an older origin. Someone in the comments says, I think it's a small group, but it's compartmentalized. See, that's been the story has been, it's just a small group, and that's why they remain hidden. But it's like, well, they're not really hiding it. It's so pervasive. I'm actually leaning towards the idea that it might be a larger group than we think. If we had to say, like, what is the percentage of people who are part of the conspiracy? Well, most of them are unwitting, but they're still part of it. So I think you're right. Compartmentalized, just
Yeah,
doing their
exactly.
job.
Yeah, yeah.
However,
And
it's not just a small cabal of like one group that you could isolate. I think that the technocracy or whatever you want to call it, the control mechanism, it doesn't matter. It's colorblind. It's just a machine, and it'll grind anybody down, and it can be used in any context. Just like the post 9/11 infrastructure for routing terrorists out was the Patriot Act. Well, they're using the same exact thing now to go after QAnoners. So you can kind of see how this template for control is really not about one particular group. It's just a machine.
yeah, exactly. I mean, it's the entire thing. I mean, and you can't really say that it's small and compartmentalized. I mean, it is agreeable in that narrative, which is why I said yeah. So I mean, it's quite a decent narrative. I mean, even the band that made something about like being ruled by water people, it seems accurate considering that we're still on maritime admiralty law. However, I mean, they have to be much bigger and much more than just compartmentalized. I mean, the way it works. I mean, if you don't believe in, say, burning books, and they'll just send you to another kind of club. And if you're not really want to party it out, they'll just send you to another kind of club. So either way, they'll just be working together in liaison. So I mean, the whole purpose, I mean, is I mean, either way, we're still being plotted against in various manners. We're still being flashed signals telling you, hey, this is nothing more than BS, or hey, guys, I mean, we're gonna undermine your culture and so and so. I mean, not that you go with culture, I mean, bacteria and all, but we're all even being flipped signs and colors and backgrounds. I mean, that's the whole point. I mean, there's just you're just rubbing in our faces.
Well, my only question now is because despite the fact that you can look at this thing as a globalist versus independent nations, but there is an occult aspect to it. It's in the subtext of all the propaganda. It's in their actual actions, and so I can't overlook the fact that whoever is in control of this place, the metascriptors, appear to have a special place in their hearts for Saturn. Any particular reason you think why that would be the case?
Wow, Saturn goes a very long way. I mean, when phones were well, when TVs were first invented, their screens were not really black. First off, I mean, they look silver, they look green. So you would have thought that they looked a little normal, maybe mercurial. Then the phones came out within the 70s, and they didn't have the black screens yet. I mean, you wouldn't see black screens until starting somewhere around '07, where you start getting these strange, like the iPhone, for instance, you get this strange black vial on a screen. LG would come to pick that up within like the early 2010s. And like the reason why the whole Saturn thing it is like just out of this point of view, the reason why the whole Saturn thing is so pervasive is because Saturn comes in under a sort of an emulation, assimilation. I mean, it goes to the black screen. So anytime you turn on your smart TV HD 4K, you're basically just watching stuff eyes wide shut without realizing that they're just basically telling you stuff that you would not comprehend. I mean, it's to keep you in the darkness.
Well, let me run this by you. So the iPhone 10 came out on an 11/3, a date often associated with the reset and the Phoenix. Well, iPhone 10 phonetically sounds like iPhoenix. Now, they just reissued it black. So now you have this black Phoenix. And my contention is that Phoenix equals Christ equals Burning Man equals 33. These symbols are so correlated that I happen to think that they have been foreshadowing a black Christ, in other words, on the world stage. I've been predicting this for some time, but just yesterday I see this iPhone X jet black being released again, and it's like there's something being put out into the memosphere connecting the term black and Phoenix, and I've seen this for some time. All of the Batman movie symbolism with Dark Knight Rising, it's about the Black Phoenix. So just pointing this out because, yes, this is one of these Black Mirror instruments. And what does it have on it? An apple with a bite mark. I mean, is that not just an emblem of Satan's gift of knowledge?
Wow, yeah. I mean, putting it that way, that really scraps a lot. I remember like more than a decade back, like 11 years ago, Ford Motor Company released a model called the Focus RS 500, and it came in all matte black. It was meant to celebrate the 500th anniversary, but point is, it came in all matte black, almost no reflection on it whatsoever. And when it comes back to the whole Saturnian thing, they're really just getting in the wave of the Black Phoenix, the wave of Saturn. Heck, maybe the wave of Kronos, maybe the wave of Hades even, but it really just hits you to notice that the whole black thing is everywhere. It's very stylish.
Well,
I know people that have all black trucks. They've had even shirts just all black.
Which anniversary? You said,
God of War.
wait, you said 500th anniversary of what now?
Well, so it's basically like the whole 500 run model thing of their RS models. I don't remember which one, but like it was the 500th anniversary of like their sports program, their production vehicles. So that's basically what it was.
Okay, the reason I ask is that the Phoenix has been associated with the number 500 because it's said to die and come back after 500 years. But yes, the Phoenix has been also associated with the Black Stone. So the Burning Man Festival, which is a Phoenix, had taken place in Black Rock City, Nevada, and that was a 33-year run. So the Black Rock, also Bill Gates' dad, by the way, worked for Black Cube. After the coronavirus market crash for Black Monday, which the Black Monday anniversary is tomorrow. And again, the term black has been used very, very advisedly by the world stage metascriptors for the last couple of years. So we're having the Black Monday anniversary. That's actually tomorrow. So there's another meaning to this term.
Crazy. Talk about black ops and everything. I did not know 500 was associated with the Phoenix so much. The Jesuits thing of being 201, which is basically 21, also seems new, but 500 in Phoenix. That kind of hits. It really makes a body just dislike a lot of that, not just vehicular stuff, but it makes a body dislike a lot of the interest that it had in the past even more now. It's like, wow, dude, they really just operate everywhere.
What is it?
Now that you mentioned the whole Black Rock, Black Monday, it really just goes to show you they're just giving anniversaries, they're shutting things down, so they say.
Well, what's more, after the lockdown, it was Blackstone. Blackstone was the one that handled the relief money. So 500 years ago, we had the Copernican Revolution. And so if there is a reset, you could say that the world changed quite literally then, the major paradigm shift. And so the Phoenix correlated with 500 may have to do with this. And I find this to be a very interesting starting point for our recent history, the Copernican Revolution, and even today. You might find this interesting because we're talking about the world stage and words and names, word magic. The Nicholas Copernicus. The name Nicholas is where we get Colin. The name Kaepernick is actually derived from Copernican. So the 33-year-old football player, Colin Kaepernick, his name actually means Nicholas Copernicus. And here he is spearheading a revolution to change the world. And Ben and Jerry give him an ice cream flavor called Change the World, spelled WHIRLED. because it's
Yeah,
world
yeah,
world
I
ice
remember
cream.
you posted that now. Yeah, yeah, I remember that subscribe star post. So yeah, I mean that's really where it gets down to. I mean the 33 football player, the Black Stone, Ben and Jerry. I mean the way he spelled world. I mean WHIRLED. I mean it seems more accurate than ever now, but it's mainly because they proposed it that way. They said it as if it were true way back in 500 years back,
Well, look, his
accelerating
date,
forward even as far as
his birth date was November the 3rd. This 33-year-old football player named Colin Kaepernick. So it all ties together very neatly in the sense that, the revolution, the reset, the timing of it. And if you look at his sacrifice on the world stage, and they constantly use that phrase, they sold his bloody gloves. For some reason, he had bloody gloves, which doesn't make sense. And this was the guy who was the quarterback when we had the 33-minute blackout in 2013. So I'm looking at the symbolism here and the Christ archetyping that they've overlaid over this character. And it all ties together very interesting because it's like, did they create this person to be a revolutionary or to lead a revolution? And is he more or less an icon? And if you look at how he's represented, even on the ice cream, he has his hair, which looks like a halo behind him or an eclipse, a corona, because the sun, when it's eclipsed, you have the corona around it. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing here. A lot of iconography being propagated. And, whether or not anything happens with this character, I think the narrative is what's there and the symbols and the play on the world stage. And one more thing, I think it's significant that he's a ball player because ultimately the name Baal is the name of the earth god that all this ritualization centers around.
BAAL.
Yep, Baal. So he's a ball player. And I think that the world stage has to take place where everybody sees it. And I think that's one of the reasons why they've seized professional sports. It's bred in circuses, and it's also there for ritual, for our programming, or whatever you want to call that.
So yeah, indeed. I mean, you touched the point on that. I mean, it's how they craft it. I mean, the whole games, the Hunger Games in that case. I mean, they really do touch up on that.
Right, exactly. And I kind of think that what we're looking at, though, next, as far as, because I've been following very closely the Stanley Kubrick narrative, so I'm convinced now that 9/11 was written decades before it happened, obviously, but I think the same metascripters wrote Corona. And I think that they wrote 2020 to be the end of time, and now we're in the new age. So I think we survived the end of the world, but whatever comes next, I think the next phase, and this is just my guess based on Kubrick for the most part, is they have to finish burning this thing down so they can build back better. And I think that kicks off when something happens above. I'm kind of predicting space wars this year.
Huh, more or less. I mean, but it does beg the question: what would they have to burn down? I mean, if not the International Space Station, what would they have to burn down? Would that be just burn down another facility? Maybe say somewhere around Silicon Valley or say New York City. I mean, it really does. That's probably the only thing to look out for the most part.
I think that the iconography predicts the space station in particular. And for this, it's because if you look at the Stanley Kubrick's film Space Odyssey 2001, there's an iconic scene of the craft arriving on the dual-wheeled space station, and it looks like the plane hitting the towers. So I kind of think that the next 9/11 is something in space, and I think the space station, as far as its architecture goes, I think it's designed to call to mind the World Trade Towers. And if you look at the solar panels, they're constantly framing it in this way. And it's all about how the imagery is communicating to us. Not what they're telling us because they lie, but Kubrick told us the truth in movies. And I believe that that's what's coming next. And I don't think calling it out will stop it. I think that this is also noteworthy that it's the 42nd year since Skylab fell. Skylab fell
Oh,
42 years ago.
good point on that. I mean, the 42 being the rise and set code, and in that case, they would really have to go out to the space station in that case. And I mean, of course, they'd have to have a LinkedIn. I mean, it couldn't be anything else then.
And it also ties in with the idea of, okay, space is heaven, so you got the heaven falling. It's the Tower of Babylon. Because if you connect the two, let's say the Tower of Babylon started falling 9/11. Well, the space station's the top of the tower that unites the world. So we're watching the destruction, I think, in slow motion. And so we haven't actually seen the system burn down yet. I think it hasn't, like, we're not even building back yet because they haven't actually finished burning it down. I think that there's still something yet to come. And this is what the Donnie Darko movie was predicting. And the reason why that movie has come into our conversations of late is that last February, plane parts fell on a house in a way reminiscent of the movie and symbolically. I mean, the house was on an Elm Street or an Elm Road, which obviously connects to the theme of sleepwalkers, which is one of the things that Donnie Darko was, among other things. So I kind of think it's been telegraphed also with the NBC movie Debris and the Leonardo DiCaprio film called Don't Look Up. I think they're preparing us for the sky.
Yes, the space junk narrative. So yeah, that fits also well. I mean, it's like going. This really connects just back to like the whole new space age, the new darkness thing. This really does connect back. I mean, they really would have to not only push, if not just push down the space station, like also make us wear hats that look exactly like space, make us, I mean, go completely dark and not even look at each other's faces. I mean, that last one, not really, but everything else, I mean, it really goes back into play. I mean, they need to keep up the myth of falling space junk. And just imagine if, somebody really does believe in like the whole explosion of International Space Station as it actually being in space rather than really being a stage, and you just suddenly see space parts. So really, they're just the ones in charge are promoting this. They're promoting the use of media towards falling space junk, the space age, and back to all that.
Yep, they gave us our frame of reference. The public has a frame of reference for space junk, and last week they even had a piece that was visible from the Chinese rocket that was over Queensland or something. So the public's ready for it. I happen to think too that see, the space station to me is also the Tower of Babylon. Unites all the nations, one language, the internet. So the next phase, space wars, would also mean they would cut off the internet or something, some kind. I mean, which would be a disaster for mind control on their part. But it just seems like
Supposedly, a source said that Russia went dark in terms of the official Russian internet services. It went dark, so that could be a beginning, or possibly more or less a testing of.
well, okay, I have two reasons now for thinking the space station's going to fall this year too. One, 42nd year since Skylab fell, and the number 42 is always being associated with falling. And we can get into that later. We're talking about Metascript. But the Skylab's was 7.7 tons, and it fell on July 11th, or 7/7. The significance here is that if you look back at the writings of Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard when they were doing that Babylon working back then, they started identifying the goddess of the night sky as Babylon instead of Isis. So the ISS, which we often refer to in this context as representing the goddess Isis, you could also call it Babylon, according to the New Agers. And if you look at the symbol of Babylon that Jack Parsons used in all of his ceremonies, you will see that it's covered in the number 77. So there's a strong correlation with that number, Babylon. And again, the Skylab's was 7.7 tons, and it fell on a 7/7. And then one more thing, Tom Cruise has been in 42 movies. When he goes up there to film this, it will be his 43rd.
Hey, that's a major hex right there. 77, 42 being more 7 rather than 6. Yes, that really hits the spot. I mean, the 42 thing, I mean, rise and set. Yeah, that's very accurate. I mean, and there's not much debate on that one or much question on that anymore.
Nope. And in the movie Vanilla Sky, which I've decoded before, it actually tells the story, I believe, of what's to come, including, I mean, there's layers to it. The soundtrack in that movie has to be paid attention to as well. They encoded that movie with all kinds of Gnostic myths, but 33-year-old, basically Tom Cross, the Jesus of Scientology, and Penelope Cruz, or Cross, who plays Sophia. You have this Gnostic myth of Sophia, the Christ figure. He's 33, being reborn after falling from the vanilla sky. And like I said, the falling is the important thing here. So he's going up there to film a movie, and this was the guy who worked with Stanley Kubrick, the man who authored the 21st century and the 20th century, it seems, or at least directed it to a large degree. So I happen to think that Tom Cruise, his mission this year, might be connected to this thing. Maybe he'll go down with a ship.
Cool. Yeah, yeah, that's a good one. I mean, that's all the cross you need. I mean, St. Andrew's, Greek, Italian, etc. I mean, that's basically all the cross you need. I mean, X marks the spot, and it's also a hex as well. I mean, it may as well be. It's basically two sevens with the angles sticking to each other.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I think this could be it. One other thing, Tom Cruise divorced all of his wives at the age of 33. He had 33 wives. Oh, you turned 33, divorced. There was 33 years between Top Gun, where he wore a helmet, and the make and model was like UHG 33. 33 years later, he does Maverick. And when he goes to the space station, he'll be wearing an Omega X33 watch. I mean, you can find Masonic stuff all over Scientology, all over Tom Cruise's movies, and I think he's the chosen one for this particular mission, which is, I believe, this next
Oh,
mission.
certainly he is. And not only that, don't forget Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible. Well, Tom Cross in Mission Impossible. He had so many action scenes of deep fakes where he tears the mask off and it turned out to be him, not the person that was supposed to be portrayed. I mean, yeah, Tom Cross is obviously the chosen one from those details and from that dissection on out. I mean, it's no debate. I mean, most people could bag at it all they want. I mean, there's a few people before, I mean, like Wildsmell per se, he bagged at Tom Cross because he doesn't look intimidating enough. But let's face it, I mean, they're obviously pointing all eyes on Tom. And also, thanks to its Vanilla Sky, the Mission Impossible series, and even that of Eyes Wide Shut, especially, I mean, no, it's clear that Cross is in the club, and it's all going to be set in motion.
Right, and he has the skill. I mean, they probably already filmed it, which is the truth of it. They probably already shot the film because this again, this is the guys in the movie directed by the guy who more or less directed 9/11, and 9/11 has been connected through this movie to, I believe, what comes next. I mean, it's pretty clear to me the space station plays an integral role, and symbolically, like I said, it's the Tower of Babylon. Symbolically, it's this. It's the final thing that has to fall before they can actually separate or scatter the tongues, break the internet, and everything else. So that's kind of what I think the end game might be. And this being the 42nd year, couldn't be any clearer. The number 42 with the movie Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and the book is all about the sky falling. In fact, one more thing. Tom Cruise putting 42,000, I'm sorry, Elon Musk putting 42,000 cube sats into the sky. There's your Saturn and cube references. 42,000 of these things go into the sky. Well, the movie Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which is where the number 42 is constantly being referenced with Musk, it opens up with a scene where cube-shaped UFOs arrive and blow up the Earth.
Wow. Yep. That's it, man. I mean, that's a bingo, man. That's definitely the target, the laser right on the target.
Yeah, I think so. And if it all goes down this way, I mean, I can't imagine they would really kill the internet, but I do imagine just more restrictions. I mean, here we are, 2 years from Christchurch, where they already established a bar just to get you to be able to stream on your phone. Oh, you got to have 1,000 subs. You got to be verified. We got to know who you are and know your opinions first. I mean, that's what they're doing. You got like 90 days to do your best to accrue subs and not say anything offensive in order to live stream on your phone. And again, this was all done because of, PewDiePie shooting up that mosque or whatever.
Oh, and keep in mind that drones are apparently being restricted as a means of getting them to register. So it could be so that this narrative may be a little shaky, but it could be so that drones will now be the equivalent of guns in terms of use and registration. So now you're no longer allowed to freely record stuff while, being at, say, at a bar or at a cafe, remote controlling footage that you could get. And I'm talking major stuff you can get.
Interesting. I mean, uh, this is where's all the guerrilla filmmakers, busting up these psyops or just exposing stuff. You would expect it. And now that there's an opportunity, and this could also be a response to like the Film Your Hospital reporters, people who are checking out these sites to see if anything was really going on. Well, they kind of destroyed the efficacy of the psyop for people who saw their videos. If you watch on the news, don't go downtown, there's bodies everywhere. And then you go on YouTube and some guy's walking around like nothing's going on. It breaks the spell.
It'll contradict. I mean, right off the bat, it will not only wash itself, but it will completely contradict. And as a result, there will be no case of cognitive dissonance anymore. There will be no case of auto believing. It will be loud and clear from there on out. And it is loud and clear from now there on out that the hospitals have been empty as a means of serving the establishment so that they could push a narrative and so that the dancing nurses can get all impunity in the world.
Yes, and the dancing nurses are just really a symptom. That's just, to me, that's the insulting part of it. But anyway, it's been a great call. Appreciate you calling in. Again, it's the second anniversary of the Christchurch event. Is there any particular facet to that stood out to you from your recollection that told you it was a hoax? Or did you just already by that time know?
Well, I mean, I didn't really start this thing until last year, but one thing I did get out of it was just the fact that New Zealand ended up bowing down. I mean, most of the people bowed down so easily to it. The fact that my bad. The fact that he suddenly just went fast forward on everything, and then suddenly the footage comes out, and he realized that most of it wasn't graphic, if at all, a real shooting, but rather some sort of stage setup. And you're just thinking, hey, what the heck is it? That was the hint that really got to this 2-year anniversary of a stunt.
Absolutely. And I always bring these things up on their hoax anniversaries because we have to remember that, if we don't go back and re-auto hoax it, it kind of cements itself in the popular imagination. And people have to be reminded, and sometimes they don't know. People tend to believe 100% of the news they didn't watch. So I think it's helpful to use
Exactly.
these days.
Stuff that makes it to history.
Exactly. I mean, they do it all the time. They use these anniversaries to rub it in our faces. Look what your gun laws did. So I like to use these anniversaries to say, hey, look what they did to our free speech because of auto-believing, fearful sheeple.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, wonderful call, Tim. Thank you very much.
Yeah, call back anytime. Have a great day. All right, everybody, this is just sort of an impromptu live stream. It's going to be a very busy week for me, which is a good thing because what is happening is I'm implementing a lot of very, very nice changes to what we do here, improving things. The new phone system, for example, has a queue. Multiple people can call in and nobody has to keep redialing. And then two, I can have multiple callers on at a time. So I'm going to start having guests frequently starting next week, and you will be able to call in and directly address them, which is a nice advantage, I think, to just relying on me to relay the comments through the chats. We're doing improvements on all the websites, the newsletters, the forum, and I'm really trying to make sure that everything's usable from mobile devices as well. Trying to get rid of the annoying CAPTCHAs. InfinitePlane.media is now focused primarily on the forum first, at the top of the page. Anyway, there's going to be a lot of improvements. We're also getting a schedule and a new theme song, intro music, as you'll hear next week. So I'll be around, but we may not be doing live streams every night. Sometimes it'll be earlier in the day, maybe both, but whatever it is, I'll keep you in touch, and the 24/7 stream will be here. So this is Murder Hornets, World War III. Have a great day. Subscribe if you're not, just to stay in the loop.